I appreciate y'all coming out. I had, through the years, me and my wife, I have especially, of course she has too, I've had real good years as I grew older. It was the help of the Lord that done that. I blame everything on the Lord that I have done, have done and received through the years. So always remember your Lord day and night, because He's one, He will take care of you. So me and my wife have been very fortunate. We've had a little minor operations, not much. But as far as that, we have had real good health, and I thank the Lord for that.
Birthday party. Get the box open.
They don't cut, it's not enough for me. There's only one for me. If y'all don't cut it, I'll take it back and get our money back.
We can do that.
Yeah.
Burnell says if we don't cut this, he can take it back and get his money back.
I think it was spring flower corn.
We'll have to try to get you some numbers.
And to get enough of this.
You did. You sure did. Can we slide it that way? There you go.
Is that?
All righty. There you go.
I guess it's ice cream.
There you go.
Yeah, there. That's much better.
You got ice cream?
No, we ain't got no ice cream. Never thought about ice cream. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Cameron. Happy birthday to you. And many more, and many more. Huh?
All right, Cameron, you want to make a speech?
No.
No?
Well, we had one little spout after 66 years, I believe it was. I have to say all this. After 66 years, it was about a year or two after we got married, and I said something about the beans or something that she'd cooked, and I said, you scorched the peas, right? And she got mad and went to the bedroom. Well, I sat in a chair there, and she stayed in there a few minutes, and I said, well, she ought to be out of the bathroom by now. So I sat there a few more minutes, and I went before we slept, and she had a suitcase, took it out of the closet, and she was throwing her clothes in this suitcase. And I walked up beside her and said, honey, where are you going? She said, I'm leaving you. I said, what? She said, yeah, I'm leaving you. Well, what happened, I had a little suitcase there, a Walmart bag, something I threw my clothes in. And she said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm going with you. So we both unpacked and we spent 66 years together on account of that one little spat. But remember the Lord all the days of your lives, and He'll bless you. Now, his name is Outlaw, isn't it?
It is, Outlaw.
Outlaw, how you doing?
But sometimes we call him Preston.
Over there's a pumpkin head with some little tags. Put your name on it. There's a little drawing after a while. Put it. And somebody's young kind of crowd around. What the story is, I remember the first day I was born. Mama went in the hospital that evening on the 31st of October, and when I was born at 4:15 that evening, at p.m. So it goes like this. Bed where my mother was laying, and I was laying right next to Mama, and I was kicking and squatting. And he said, Miss Scoggins, you did well. You did good. And she said, good. And good was her favorite word. You'll hear the word good wherever throughout this this story. So he stood there, and him and his nurse name was Miss Reed, or Nurse Reed, which was Dr. Reed's nurse, which was his daughter. So they kept the money in the family, look like that. So that's about the only two run the little hospital. it had about three rooms and a weight room, things like that. So as he reached for the doorknob, he opened the door, and he turned to Mom and said, "Miss Scoggins, you did good. I'm going to send you down in a few minutes by the nurse. I'm going to send you some pills, some sleeping pills and so on. It'll make you rest good and you'll feel better in the morning." She said, "Good." So he closed the door and he left. And me and Mom, we dozed off to sleep there a little after that, so about 6 p.m. And we didn't wake till the next morning till about 6 p.m., I believe it was. And we woke up, and somebody had opened the old door, and it woke us up. We both turned our heads and looked who was coming in. It was the nurse. And the old door had some old hinges on it, and they squeaked. So you know somebody was coming in the room when the old door squeaked. And Mom said to me, "If I had some oil or some bacon grease, I'd pour it on those screen hinges." So I got that mixed. But anyway, she said that bacon grease is just good as anything at all. So I guess she used to use it at home at the old house. But anyway, she come in and said, "Miss Scoggins, how you doing?" Mama said, "I'm good." So she said, "In a few minutes, I'll bring you some breakfast." And Mama said, "Good." So in a few minutes, she came back with some scrambled eggs and bacon and hot biscuits and jelly and gravy and stuff like that, and a cup of world's wonderful seaport coffee. Everybody then drunk seaport coffee. I doubt if you can even buy it anymore. So she ate, and she started to leave the room, and I was laying over there kicking and kind of whining. And she said, "Oh yeah, son, I know what you want." So she went on and come back in a few minutes, and she bought me something stuck in my mouth. I did like that, and it tastes so good. And I sucked all of it out of whatever it was in. And so I hushed in and got real quiet. And so we dozed off like to sleep about 8 o'clock that night. And we, old door, squeaky door with hinges that squeak. Mama said if I had some bacon grease, I'd pour it on them old hinges. Stop that. But we turned our heads, and it was Dr. Reed and his nurse had come in to check on us. So Dr. Reed looked at Mother and said, "Miss Scoggins, you're doing good. You're doing good. And you got a good, healthy boy." Mama said, "Good." He turned them all again and says, "Miss Scoggins, he's got all 10 toes and all 10 fingers." And she said, "Good." So anyway, they started out door, and as they went out the door, he turned them on and said, "Miss Scoggins, as soon as you get dressed, you can go home. I'll dismiss you from that. You go home." Mama said, "Good." So the nurse stayed in there and helped Mama get dressed and everything. And so when she got dressed, it was somebody right outside the door. There were 2 men talking. And I thought it was my daddy talking, but I wasn't for sure, but he was talking to somebody else. And they was discussing the cold weather. The weather that morning was down about 32 degrees, and the wind was blowing about 15, 20 miles outside, somebody said. So they got to talking about hog killing. And one said to the other, said, "Man, if I had a hog, I would kill that thing today." And I said to myself, "Well, what is a hog killing?" So they talked for a little while, and this one says, "Well, I don't have a hog, but," he said, "I know where I can get one." And he said, "Where?" He said, "We'll steal one from Ola K." So that was the name of that store. Dad's door opened, we started out the door by then. And we went down a long hall. There was it looked like about a mile down there, but wasn't probably about 50 feet, a little 50 foot length. And the nurse was carrying me in their arms, wrapped up out of the cold. And Mama was carrying her old clothes. And wherever Mother went, even till when she died, she carried her old clothes or clothes wherever she spent the night in the Walmart bag. So she put all her clothes in an old Walmart bag, and so they started down the hall, and Dad got to a little room there and said, "Just a minute." So he went and knocked on the door, and somebody inside said, "Come in." Daddy opened the door and walked in, and I said, Dr. Reed. He had his glasses down on the tip of his nose. He was drinking a cup of that world-famous Seaport coffee and reading the daily Leesville Leader. And he said, "Mr. Scoggins, what can I do for you?" Dad said, "I'll come by to pay my bill." And so he said, "Okay," and he pushed his glasses back on his nose, and he got to fumbling some papers there, and he said, "Oh, yeah, here it is." He says, "You owe me $35, what it was." Daddy said, "Okay." So Daddy reached in his pocket and gave him a $20 bill, a $10 bill, and a $5 bill. And the doctor paid over there, paid, and Daddy said, we'll hope everything works out, and we'll see you later. So Daddy closed the door and met Ma and the nurse at the front door where they was waiting on him because they didn't want to get out in that cold wind. And so as they stepped out on a little porch, wasn't very big, and the wind was really blowing. It was cold. I was so cold I had chill bumps all over me. I was cold that morning. But anyway, they stepped out on the ground, and Daddy had me in his arms. Ma had an old Walmart bag with clothes in. And soon as he stepped out on the ground, a loud whistle went off. And it scared me. I jumped. Ma was holding me like that and said, "It's okay, it's okay." What it was, a train passed by about that time and blew this whistle, and it scared me to death. And I started to cry. And Ma looked down at me and pulled back the blanket on my head, and she looked at it and she said, "Rock-a-bye, baby, in the treetop," and I went to sleep. Well, later on, I heard Daddy say to Ma, said, "Well, here's a highway we'll get and go home on." We lived on the old Powell Road. I don't know if anybody knows where Powell Road is, but it's still there today. But anyway, we got the old 39 truck going the right direction. Daddy said, "Well, here's the highway, the road we're going to go home on." And Mama said, "Good." And then I looked at both of them and I said, "It's about time. I'm tired of this place, all that noise." So Daddy helped Mama in the truck and started off and everything. So we went we didn't live but 12 miles out of town. About 12 miles we lived out of town. From Leesville down to where we lived was about 12 miles. So I started crying again. And Mama says, "It's okay, it's okay." That's the old truck tires crunching on the gravel or the rocks. And I started to whimper a little bit, again, and move around. And Mama looked down and said, "Rock-a-bye, baby, in the treetop." And I hushed and went back to sleep. So it looked like we drove a long ways and got out of town there. And about that time, we got out on the highway, the old rock road, I began to coughing and sneezing and all of that. And Mama said, "It's okay if some old vehicle has stirred up the dust on the highway that's got in your nose and stuff." So I hushed down. She didn't sing to me that time. So we kept going. And Daddy was pointing out to Mama. Mama didn't get out down there where we lived too much. Sometimes Daddy do all the shopping and going. And she said the kids, at that time she had 5 kids, so she didn't go very far. So we passed the first house we passed. I had them up the other day from Leesville to Powell Road. There were but 7 houses on the highway. 7 people houses, which if you look now, there's probably 700. But there were 7 families lived on that highway at that time. And he said, "Now, Ma, here's where Mr. Anyway, he said, this is where Mr. Well, I'm going to skip that word. I know. anyway, and she said, good. So I just dozed back off to sleep, and Mother said, now, that out across the road there is where is a blacksmith shop. And Mama looked at it and says, what? She said, a blacksmith shop. And Mama just happened to know a little bit about the country. She said, I didn't know there was any blacksmiths around here. Daddy said, no, he was a forger, kind of like a welder. He said, you take this metal and they beat it together and make stuff out of it. And she said, oh, I thought he was a black man named Smith. So anyway, we went a little bit further, and we passed the next house, and we passed a dairy farm where Mr. Herd Stevens had a dairy farm, and he had a lot of cows, and he sold milk to around the public side of the people. So, and Mama said, looked down at me and said, that milk's when you drink it, it's going to make you strong and healthy and big boy. And I said, well, I just did good, something like that. So we went on a little bit further, which we didn't go very far. These old houses, pretty much, they are gone, most of them. We went a little bit further, and he said, now, this is where Mr. Henry Roberts lived and his wife, Lulie. And he says, he don't have a public job. He raises vegetables, eggs and stuff, and takes to Leesville and buys that good world famous seaport coffee and sugar and things like that he gets for the money. And so we left there and we went, it seemed like forever. Wasn't just almost to jump and hop to the next house. Now he looked up and said, now this is where Mr. Van Lee lives, and he does the highway work on the highway. He was like a grader of a state of Louisiana. He was a grader, and his name was Susie. Mama said, oh, good. And he has got one boy, and his name is Van. Mama said, good. So we went just a little bit further, and we passed another place, and Daddy said, now this is where John Stimmings lived. Some of the old houses still there. Mr. Stimmings, they reworked it. And that's where Mr. Stimmings lived, and his wife's name is Della, and they have three boys, Joe, Charles, and Janelle. That was the three boys they had. And so she said, good. And she said, what does he do to feed those three boys? Well, he said he has lots of cows. He raises corn. He raises peanuts and raises hay for his cows. And that's how he makes a living. She said, well, good. So we went a long ways again. And to me it wasn't probably a mile or so. We come over the hill, which I'll make you familiar, what we call the airport hill now, where the airplane place is. And we come over the hill and started down the road toward the old creek. And Daddy said to Mama, said, now, this is the land I was telling you about we bought from Burnell Scoggins, or from brother, he calls it, from brother. We brought from Brother Scoggins, which was Daddy's brother. And Mama said, good. And she looked it over pretty much, and she said, it's a pretty place here. Daddy said, yeah. He said, we're going to start building us a house in the next few years or days. And she said, good. That was the house I actually grew up in, the one that burnt basically. So we left there going down toward the old creek there, and they had an old long wooden bridge on it. One car at a time could just get on this bridge, and when we got on it, the old planks and boards was real loose, rattling and everything. Daddy, Mama said, I sure hope this thing don't fall in. And Daddy said, well, I don't think it will. And it scared me. I was afraid we'd fall in and off the bridge and get hurt. But anyway, we left there and come on a little bit further. And we got a place we call Oran. His name was Oran K. And if you remember, before you get to church there's two big cedar trees there. It's still there. And they had a big mouse home kind of built behind them cedar trees there. So Daddy said, this is where Oran K lives, and his wife, Florence. And then Mama said, well, do they have any kids? And he said, yeah, they got 2 fine boys. He said, one of them's name is Oran Van and the other name is Burnell. Mama said, good. So they went a little bit further, and by then we got into the old store, which had been going about 30 years, which when the new highway come through there was 78. We got there and we passed a place on that side. Mama recognized it because she'd been there a long time. They call it the canning kitchen, or the public place people can groceries or canned food and meat and stuff, and make sew and talk. And so she was telling Daddy what all they was making to do there. And Mama said, yeah, we sat around and talk a lot. And Daddy looked at it and said, it's mostly gossip. So anyway, by then we pulled in the old store that my Uncle Mitchell had. And Daddy said, give me 30 cents worth of gas. Well, that was about 3 or 4 gallons, what much. So Grandpa, Uncle Mitchell pumped the old pump up. It registered like 2 gallons or something on the gauge, right? They put it in. And it began to make me cough and sneeze. Mama said, it's okay. It's that old stuff Daddy's put in the gas tank so we can get home that we don't run out of gas. And they stood there and talked a minute, and his wife, his name was Liza. And she was up at the wash pot washing clothes. They had 3 children, Ruby, and Quinlan and Selmer. And so Liza had to come down there and hold me. She said, Mamie, can I hold you, baby? And Mama said, yeah, you can hold her. Well, I was turning and squished a little bit. And the 3 girls come out, the 3 children, and they Ruby was the oldest, and she wanted to hold the girl. She was about 14, and Mama said, okay, be careful, don't drop her now, drop her. So she's looking at it, and she raised a little flap thing over the curtain, over the blanket, and looked down, and about that time I looked up, I opened my eyes, and she said, oh, well, Mama thought something was wrong. And then Ruby comes in there and says, he has the prettiest blue eyes I have ever seen. And I said to myself, well, what color is everybody's eyes if they ain't blue? And Sarah had a comment, said, yeah, when he grows up, he's going to be blonde-headed too. So Quentin looked at me and said, it's just another old blonde-headed boy. And I said to myself to him, yeah, just like you. I said, go butter stump. So we got in the old truck, and it backfired 2 or 3 times, and it scared me. And we finally got started down the highway, and I was still crying. And Mama looked down and said, rock-a-bye, baby, in the treetop. And I hushed, and we went a long ways, real long time. And I was sleeping all this time, and we paid Daddy's sister, her name was Ozzie. They lived right on top of the hill there from the old Stevens Grove. If you know where the Stevens Grove, that's where she raised her family, they did. And his name was Wiley. And they had 5 children, Rebecca, Hazel, Buddy, and Nella Faye, and Melvin Ray was the 5 boys. And Mama said, well, I understand Melvin Ray has begun to walk. He was about a year old. He was born a year before I was. Mama said, I understand he's beginning to walk. And Daddy said, yeah, I heard that. So they went on and went a long ways again. And I heard Daddy woke me up talking. He says, now this is where Uncle Henry, his brother, lived. Where Nana's place is now, that's where Uncle Henry lived. So they were talking about Uncle Henry. And they had 3 girls, Audrey, Hazel, Cardi, Audrey, and Delta Faye. No, that ain't right either. I'll get it right. Anyway, they talked about the 3 girls, and Daddy said, well, what does Henry do to feed those 3 girls? He just lost his wife about 6 months or so previous to that. And Daddy said, she said, well, what, since, I think her name was Eva, but anyway, she said, what does Eva do to feed all them girls? And he said, well, he does jobs, he does plowing. He gets the old horse and wagon out and throws his turning plow patch. He goes and plows gardens and stuff, makes a little money. But he raises cotton. He was a good cotton farmer, I can't remember. He says, he raises some corn. And he said also he raises cane. Mama said, looked at him and said, I didn't ever know Henry was like that. Daddy said, like what? Raising cane. Daddy said, oh, I meant sugar cane that you make syrup out of. Mama said, oh. So anyway, we left there. There wasn't many houses from there down to the old File Road, maybe 2. And before we got there, about where it was set, about what we call the K graveyard, where the old Log's Landing is there. Most of it, there were Log's Landing Road is. Anyway, it was, we passed there, and that's where the old Milford, I made a replica of the building. I should have brought it and showed you. I made a replica of the building, and it was at one time a schoolhouse and also a church house. That's where the community did. But a few years later, they moved the building, or part of the old building, on down what now is Canaan. That's where it sits today. But it was named Milford at one time, and that existed up to, I think it finally went out of business up there. Old Milford went out of business in 1900, and Canaan's been down to that place since around 1900 up to now. So we left there, and we was getting close to Powell Road, and I woke up and I heard Daddy say, well, we're about almost the road to go home on. And I looked up and I said, oh, well, good, something like that. And I went back to sleep. But we got a little further down the road. Before we got to the road, Daddy had a brother named Oran Scoggins. Some of his place is still there. And Mama says, what does he do? And Daddy said, well, he raises cotton, he raises he raises corn and potatoes, and he sells it to farmers around about, and that's how he pays his people. By then, we'd got to the Powell Road. We turned on Powell Road. There wasn't no houses from Powell Road down to, one house was there, from there down to our house. There was one house that was set about just a little piece. That's where Uncle Henry's old house is. And that was Mama's uncle. And they had 4 boys, I think it was, 3 boys and a girl. They had Bland, and they had Arthur, and one named Henry Edwin. He was bad about drinking, even up to he died a few years ago. And they had one girl named Lear, so they had 4 kids there. And Daddy said, well, no, Mama said this. Mama said, you know, Uncle Henry would have the prettiest, whitest beard you ever have seen. And Daddy said, yeah, if he'd quit that old smoking, the old pipe, blowing that smoke all over his beard, it would be pretty, but it's plumb dingy looking now. So by then we'd pull in the driveway where the 2 big oak trees still stand, and we unloaded there, started getting out, and I heard a lot of screaming and hollering, and I couldn't figure it out, and I began to cry. And Mama said, it's okay, it's all the young'uns. And she said, rock-a-bye, baby, and the trees, and I kind of dozed off then. And here come Merle, Admiral, Burnell, and excuse me, Billy, out of the yard there. Some of them was up in the trees playing, some was playing in the dirt, some of them was in the house. But they all come running out and wanting to hold me, wanting to hold me. Mama said, no, I'm not going to let you hold him yet. So they all got gathered around. They was jumping up and down and hollering and screaming. And scared me again. It scared. Mama said, rock-a-bye, baby, in the treetop. And that hushed me for a while. And so they went on, and visitors come from everywhere. The first visitors was Grandpa and Granny Cole. And Granny, the first thing she wanted to do was hold me. So Mama put me in her arms and looked at me. She did. And Granny said, oh, have you noticed, Mamie? He has the prettiest blue eyes you ever have seen. And Mama said, well, I haven't yet, but I heard somebody comment on his eyes. And so time went on that evening. And so about, it was up a day because it took all day to go from Leesville out to the house at 15 miles, 20 miles an hour. So everything got settled down pretty good. And so Granny and Grandpa come over, and Grandpa looked at me and said, yeah, sis, he called Mama sis. Said, sis, you have a fine-looking baby boy. Mama said, good. And a little while, Harvey and in a little while, Annie Murdy, we always call her Annie. That her name was Murdy. Her and her husband Ray, and they had one girl named Lucille. So they came over, and of course Grady had to hold me and was commenting on it and saying. And a little while later, Harvey and Aline came by. They heard we was home, so they came by, and they was out there sitting on the porch, and Aline had to hold me. She said, baby, I got to hold that baby. I don't know how it was. They just hadn't been married about a year at that time. And she said to Mamie, she said, if I have any children, I sure hope they have blue eyes like he has, and pretty blonde hair. I had a little bit of hair. And Aline laughed at that time. So they stayed there a while, and Uncle Burton, their mama and brother came by, and he visited Daddy. He looked at me. He looked down at it, and his comment was, he said, oh, it's just going to be another old mouth to feed. And I looked at it and looked up at it, and I said, yeah, you're not going to need a mouth to feed me either. So he said, told me to my face, he said, if you'll bend over here, I'll jerk that little mustache off of your lips. I was kind of mean back then. So many people came around and visited for the whole week and wanted to hold me and look at it and comment on me, how pretty I was, and the eyes and my hair and stuff like that. But Aline said, yeah, but you can look at the fella now. She said, I wish my baby would have pretty blue eyes like that. Look at Dickie. Have you got blue eyes, Dickie?
No.
Well, your mama didn't get no wish there then, did she? She got a baby bouncing boy, didn't she? But Harvey and Allie at that time, at 35, did not have no children. Like I say, they had been there just about a year. As time went on, I grew in stature and in wisdom. And look at me now. That was the story of the first time I remember. That was not the first time. But since then, I've lost a lot of my senses and my memories and all that. It's faded away from me. as we go along, I'll talk about the old truck. I'll just tell you right now. This is an old 1929 long wheelbase Dodge. I didn't get the tires on it. I have the tires, but I did not get it set up. It even have some headlights. You got tail lights, things like that. But I didn't quite get it finished. But we'll, one of these days when I get time. Listen, I was going to tell you a story about your mother. Yeah. Okay. We had this old pickup truck, and Daddy traded it off in 1940 and bought a pickup truck. But everywhere we kids would go, we sat on these boxes here, and of course Daddy looked through the hole there and make sure he was counting us and make sure he hadn't lost none. That way we wouldn't have to go back. He'd say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I still got on. Now if he counted like 1, 2, 3, 4, he'd have to turn around and go back. But anyway, we was going down. It was cold that day, real cold. And we was kids sitting on this apple box or this box. That's Daddy's old toolbox. Anyway, between this and the cab, there was a place about that wide that you could look down and see the ground down there. Well, we was pulling for cover back there. It was cold, and me and Jelena and Larry, and probably Billy, but anyway, but Jelena was there with us in there, and we was pulling that cover, trying to get it covered up, and who's gonna get the most. Anyway, that blanket got down. There's a hole on the old original. There's a hole right across here. You can see the ground. There's a crankshaft, and that old blanket fell down that hole and got wrapped around the drive shaft that come out there. Well, when it did, it stopped the old truck. We were going along about 15 miles an hour. We just stopped like that. Well, we thought we was out of gas or something like that, you know. Daddy got out and was looking around. He looked around the truck, and the old blanket was wrapped around the drive shaft, and us kids was cold. Daddy had to get out there, and there was a knife and cut all that loose before we go on. And us kids were blaming each other. I'd say, well, Jelena had the most of it. She caused it. And Jelena said, no, Larry was sitting back there. No, not Larry. He wasn't born then. Anyway, we were blaming each one of them. And we tried to put all the blame in. Billy tried to put all the blame on Jelena, but she wouldn't take it. So she said, no, you boys are the one that did it. So we fussed about that a little bit. Daddy got the thing going again, and we got on the road.
Tell me about the time that chain got caught up in that drive shaft and almost beat Billy to death.
Do I know?
There was a chain that got caught down in there and wrapped around there. Jelena was telling me about it. Said somebody, maybe it was Larry, they got caught around that thing and started hitting Larry. He was screaming, and Grandpa didn't know what was going on. He's looking back there. Larry was doing and he's telling him, sit down, sit down. He couldn't sit down because that chain was whooping him. He finally got away from it and fell back over here. And so then he thought, well, you know, Larry was crying. So Grandpa stopped the truck off the side of the road, and he went back and goes, well, what's the matter with you? He was bloody. I mean, that chain whooped him. And he said, there's an old snake done got a hold of me. And so he looked around, and he didn't see nothing, but he saw that chain laid over here. It come out of this box. The lid had come up, and the chain had cracked over here.
And many a thing happened on that old truck.
And Dad said that whenever there wasn't school in season, this cover that was here could come off.
Yeah.
And they set it on like sawhorses, and they took and they hauled hay with that. And school season come back on, cleaned it up, put the cover back on.
Daddy didn't drive the school bus long. He probably got a pretty good job of, hauling logs or something.
Yeah.
Which paid a lot more. Well, when Daddy had this old truck and had that old make body on that thing, there's a creek down there. I could take you for a while. It was down there close to Evan. There's an old wooden bridge there. And Daddy started to cross the bridge, and also a log wagon.
Yeah.
And they met in the middle, and I think they have a little bump and scrub there for me. But everybody talked about that for a long time. Did you hear about that bad wreck on the Red Banks Ridge, though. Yeah, Mr. Scoggins so yeah, log truck there, a log rider. And that was a big talk
Big
for
topic, huh?
2 or 3 months. There wasn't much to talk about back then, just the little thing.
Yeah.
I want to say something about the old truck. Daddy bought it just a few months for the 29 before it went out that year. Why he bought it was that he had a job driving a school bus, and he took it home, and he put a little bed on it with some seats in it, and he hauled some of my sisters and brothers in it, and so he got a job hauling logs on the thing. So he used the old truck as a log truck, and he used it for lots of time. I don't know what I did with the old truck. There's something else here. But somebody look at the painting would say, a lot of y'all might say, well, who painted that thing? Well, how many knew that Daddy was in the Navy? Raise your hand. How many did not know that Daddy was in the Navy? How many don't care? Anyway, let's go on. So the old truck was used several purposes at that time. Daddy would make a few dollars. A lot of people back then would move about every month or two. When the rent come due, they'd come to Daddy and say, Mr. Scoggins, I need to go so-and-so. Daddy said, well, it's going to cost you 50 cents. Daddy said, okay. So Daddy paid Daddy, and then Daddy had a job around the community. A lot of people didn't have cars back in 29. A lot of people, in other words, bought rides like we do sometimes today when the old truck won't crazy. But anyway, he'd charge everybody like 35, 40 cents to take them out to the old grocery store there in town, and they'd shop, and Daddy'd take them home and all of that. And he'd make $3 or $4 a trip, but didn't go very many times. But Daddy did everything in the world to make a living for us. It was, at that time, these 6 of us kids was counting me. So he did everything he did with the old truck. He used it for a lot of reasons. How many knew that Daddy was a pumpkin raiser? There's a pumpkin here somewhere I brought. Oh, somebody might have got it. Anyway, Daddy was a pumpkin raiser. How many knew Daddy raised pumpkin for a living? You did? That was one.
Watermelons too.
Anybody else? No. Okay. How many don't care? So we go on. Anyway, Daddy used the old truck, and finally he took the old thing off of the old shell off of there where the kids sit out of the rain, and made the log truck out of it. He's a log haul. He would haul logs on it sometimes. He'd move people from one place to the other for 2 bits or $1 or something like that. Of course, you could travel back then. Gas was 9 cents a gallon. 9 cents. You could fill up a tank for about 45 cents. Most tanks didn't hold much back then. 4 or 5 gallons probably most vehicles out, but for less than 50 cents, you could fill your vehicle up. You can't even pick up the pump handle now for 50 cents. So, Daddy, that's how you use the old pickup truck. And reason that pumpkin, I was got saying about pumpkin a while ago, reason the pumpkin was so big that that was a big pumpkin there. That's one of the, he was out hoeing the pumpkin fields that day, and he had my sister, Edna, putting out the fertilizer. And something stung her on her foot, and she threw that fertilizer down on top of one of the pumpkins, and what it did, all the fertilizer fell around that pumpkin, and it made that big pumpkin. That's why it goes so big. It got all the fertilizer. So that's how the story about the big pumpkin. There's an old truck, you can see it over there, wherever it is. It had no windows. I just had no windows, only a windshield, and an apple box to sit on for the person that's not a passenger. Apple boxes back then were very useful. Everybody had an apple box, because when you had a company, you went and drug out the old apple box, and it had many uses around the house. The women would get some, and they'd drive it from the wall in the kitchen. They'd put dishes in it, portion, and then make a little curtain hang over to keep the fly stuff off of it. Or they would take an apple box, and they would they'd put long legs on it. That way, the wife or the woman didn't have to reach down there, wait down there and get out of that apple box. So they put some tall legs on it for them. It kind of stood up about waist high then. And they put cotton. Everybody had a lot of cotton back there, and cloths, and make the baby a good place to lay and sleep. And some of the men would take an apple box and they'd put a rocker on each end, and then make a rocker, and the woman sit there and rock the baby in that apple box back and forth. But apple boxes played a very important part in people's lives back then. We just didn't have grocery store and buy a chair or a table, stuff like that. Just everything people had back then, it was homemade just about. So that's about it, gentlemen, ladies. But everybody doing okay at this table?
Can't complain.
All right.
Okay. Good.
Good.
All right, man.